Thank you, Jared, and thank you to all of you in this room who have been advocates, champions, change agents on these issues, frankly, for quite a long time. And many of you are probably equally, if not more frustrated as I am, that we haven't made greater progress in a shorter timeline, given the severity of the calamity that we're facing. I remember 3 years ago when I was first elected lieutenant governor, that night was a traumatic experience, I think, for many of us. And I thought about my then 11-year-old daughter as I went to bed, supposedly needing, or should have been euphoric, having won, thinking about two issues, the Supreme Court and climate change. And now I think we're all using the more appropriate term, the climate crisis. And I think it's critically important that we take this on as a crisis, as a national emergency, as an international emergency, and that we have to be incredible leaders across the spectrum in this room, presenting the ideas that we need to execute and working with folks who may be skeptical to offer the amazing kinds of information that Jared presented earlier with respect to how this change will actually improve people's lives, their health, their economic circumstances, and so forth. But I think there's some aspects of this boldness that we also need to do ourselves, looking at our own positions in society, and thinking about what are the privileges that we have in this room just to be able to sit here and talk about this as part of either our work or our passion, relative to many who are frankly struggling day to day just to put food on their table or pay their heating bill or put fuel in their car. What is possible? I think about what's possible. I think, okay, 3 years ago, did anybody know about Greta Thunberg? Did she think it was possible to get an opportunity to speak to the global leaders with respect to the climate, or just global leaders, period? No. So anything that we think might be attainable probably is, if we are risky, if we are bold, and if we are strong in our views on these issues. I saw a presentation a while ago that pointed out wealth inequality over the last 40 years and CO2 emissions over the last 40 years. And if we don't tie those two things together in our minds to then look at where the resources are to redistribute, these democratic socialist terms that some of us need to stop being afraid to use, redistribute that wealth to create a climate economy that's going to work, then we're not going to get there. We need to set up both policies that have good incentives and create good programs and make it possible for tax credits for middle and upper middle income folks to do solar panels or convert things or buy electric cars. But we also need to literally redistribute money from the wealthy class to working people so that they can have solar panels, so that they can buy electric vehicles, so they can retrofit their homes, not at $2 or $3 million a year, but at $20, $30, and $50 million a year. This spring, I was asked on public radio after the House had passed a 2-cent fuel tax for weatherization, whether I supported it. And what I said was, let me tell you what I support. Vermont received, under the Trump tax cuts, across the board, about $500 million in tax cuts. The wealthiest 10% were receiving about $300 million of that. I said, what if for 5 years, we were to take half of that? Let them have half for Wall Street and investing, but let's take the other half and invest and say, why don't you all invest that in Vermont? If you're going to do it on your own and you can show you're doing that, then we'll figure out a way not to have that tax apply to you. But otherwise, let's take $150 million a year for 5 years and invest it in capital infrastructure in our state for our economy and the environment. What if we put $30 million a year for 5 years into weatherization of low-income homes, not the $4 million? What if we put $30 million a year into subsidizing electric and renewable energy vehicles for working class people, so that then they would have those vehicles that would save them money and they would be turning that into the local economy? What if we put $30 million a year for 5 years into broadband into our rural areas, just like we did in the New Deal with electricity and phones, and build a rural economy so people don't have to commute an hour every day and many, many miles in their vehicles. That's an environmental issue as well as an economic issue. What if we put $30 million a year into low income solar and heat pumps and so forth? And finally, the last 30 million a year, I actually talked about going towards just simply paying down our debt. Because, and by the way, I want to applaud Neil. Where are you? I really appreciated your comments because you talked about the societal buy-in and everybody pulling together, and I completely agree with you. The only slight adjustment I'm going to make with respect to it is that we have indebted our society. We've indebted our children. We have indebted everything about us by taking out bonds, by saying, we'll pay for this in the future. It'll all work out. Well, has it been? Our college debt is higher. Our loans are higher. Our expenses are higher. We have to have the courage to face the reality that we have in front of us. And part of that is the incredible debt we have. And so even just paying down some of our debt. So I'm asking the wealthiest Vermonters, and I would like you to all consider this, maybe it's not the idea that floats to the top through the end of the day, to consider, are we willing to say, let's pay for it in real time, as opposed to putting the debt on our future? Because so far that's failed. It's failed our environment. Look what we're living with. So my general thought from that idea, because it could be different numbers, it could be different scale, and it needs to be in combination with many of the other great ideas that have been presented, whether it's the modified Essex plan that generated great conversation last year, but hit the political wall, which, by the way, I'll point out, was also used hard against me in political campaigning, and yet I got 58% of the vote. So we have to recognize that political courage, that the votes are there, the public support is there for some of these ideas, but it may not always be felt because of some of the voices and power that's in the political structure behind what you see. But if we continue, and you all continue, to be the leaders you are, both elected leaders, community leaders, organizational, business leaders, et cetera, to pull our oars in the same direction and tie the economic benefits to the reality of these policy changes like the Essex plan or other ideas, then we will get the social buy-in of our society. Because the reality is, without that social buy-in of our communities, the political leadership will be afraid to move forward on these kinds of ideas. And it's going to take our personal adjustments in our day-to-day lives, as well as our societal policy ideas, and not just goals, but actually implementation of programs and financing and so forth to get us where we need to go. It is embarrassing, back to Jared's graph, of where we are compared to California and British Columbia and Northern Austria, I think it was, that you gave as an example. We're supposed to be the greenest state in the country. UVM is supposed to be the greenest university in the country, in Middlebury and otherwise. We are resting on our laurels when it's time to get up and stop resting. So I'm going to wrap by saying, I was speaking with someone earlier today who was at the Vision 2050 conference at Breadloaf a week or two ago. And I mentioned in that about the social buy-in, about working with and communicating with Vermonters across the board. And I challenged the room to think about how do we reach the struggling Vermonter who may well have that same gut reaction that most people have, which is our inner Darwinian reptilian response of fear and me and care for my little sphere. That's our natural inner instinct. And we are at a time and place and an ability where we are challenging the mind and its capacity versus that reptilian inner self. And how do we have that conversation beyond that immediate gut reaction of that's going to hit me or my pocketbook? And part of it is we also have to face the reality that when some of us talk about this future and these goals and the changes we need to make from the comfort of the economic middle class or upper middle class to people who are struggling in that day-to-day bills that they are facing. When we say, you're worse for the environment because of a snowmobiling or ATVing or other activities, and I'll get back to you after I finish my vacation in Costa Rica or Puerto Rico or somewhere else, that our carbon footprint is very real for those of us that sometimes address some of it in our day-to-day life, but also still jet around. And I'm not saying we should stop jetting around, but we have to recognize that we talk down our noses to people, we're not going to get that social contract buy-in. So that is my shtick to you for how we need to get bold and work together to do it. Thank you.